If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone. And I can use that pen to sign executive orders.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
And when they say, I want my lawyer, you tell them, shut up.
My change in party will enable me to be re-elected.
I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it. Mr. Reagan will raise taxes, and so will I.
It is the constitutional position. It is the advice of the founders to follow a non-interventionist foreign policy. Stay out of entangling alliances.
This is a dangerous man, citizen. Avert your eyes. Don't you dare listen to this man. Avert your eyes, citizen. He's extreme. He's dangerous. He's crazy. He's not respectable.
Welcome, my friends, to Liberty or Death Radio, Episode 10. In this episode, we will be covering Pennsylvania and U.S. firearm law with Attorney Joshua Prince from the Prince Law Offices and pending firearm legislation in both the Pennsylvania Senate and House of Representatives with Tom Campione from Pennsylvanians for Self-Protection. At Liberty or Death Radio, we are sounding the alarm of freedom to an awakening citizenry and setting brush fires in the minds of men. You can find us online at danielrayrichdson.com, facebook.com/Liberty or Death Radio, twitter.com/Liberty or Death R, or at Liberty or Death R on Twitter. Email the show with your questions and comments at libertyordeathradio@gmail.com. Again, libertyordeathradio@gmail.com. We hope to hear from you. The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Pennsylvania Constitution says in Article 1, Section 21 says, the right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. We trust that you benefit from and enjoy the show. Okay, Joshua, thank you for coming on Liberty or Death Radio. We appreciate that. I want to say we'll be covering U.S. and Pennsylvania firearm law, and it's not applicable for other states. Josh, did you have any other disclaimer legally?
No.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, you should always consult with an attorney that's licensed in your state and is aware of the legal issues that you're confronting.
Obviously, as I see it, there are two types of carrying a firearm in Pennsylvania, open or concealed. So could you just define for us open carry? I just want to make sure people understand exactly what open carry is. I don't think everybody gets that.
Sure, and I want to touch on the issue of open carry in a second, but basically, open carry is where the firearm is visible to those around you. So the example I most frequently give to someone who doesn't comprehend what open carry is think about the police officer that's walking down the street. He's on the job in uniform. He's going to have his firearm on his hip in a holster, but where you can see that he's she is carrying that firearm. That's open carry. It's not concealed by one's clothing or other stuff. Nothing's over top of it.
Okay, and that's one thing I was going to get at, because obviously we just came through the winter season, and let's say I'm out there open carrying, but I get cold. So I pull my jacket out of the car, and I'm thinking, well, it's still partly visible. I'm not open carrying anymore, am I?
No, you're not.
Okay. All right, that's good that we get that clear, because I think that can get very confusing, and obviously the ramifications can be very devastating.
Right. And I would say that we virtually have no case law that really addresses the point at which it goes from open to concealed carry.
Okay.
So it's always going to be a case-by-case analysis. There is some point where you may have the jacket on, but it's not covering the firearm, where it's still open carry, and there's a point at which the jacket has covered a sufficient amount of the firearm for it now to be concealed carry. Where that point is, I can't tell you, unfortunately.
And it's always better to err on the side of caution with that. Where may a person not open carry without a license to carry firearms, which is what Pennsylvania calls their license?
Correct. That would be in the city of Philadelphia, as well as in any mode of transportation. So your vehicle, lawnmower, bicycle, moped, any mode of transportation requires a license to carry firearms, even if it's completely visible. So if I have my firearm open carrying on my right hip where everyone can see it, but I get on my bicycle, I need a license to carry firearms to do that. Otherwise, I'm in violation of the law. I have my firearm loaded, put it on the front dash to my vehicle. Everyone can see it. No, that constitutes concealed carry here in the Commonwealth, and you need a license to carry firearms for that. Also, I want to address a concern regarding open carry, and that is something that is not frequently discussed. Although we do have case law from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court establishing that open carry is legal, one of the issues that was not before the court in that determination was a violation of our transportation laws. And our transportation laws are very specific. We can only go to and from our range to the home. We can only go from the dealer to our home or back to the dealer. There's only certain allowances where one can transport a firearm if they do not have a license to carry firearms. So one of the situations that we see all too frequently is an individual separates his ammunition and firearm, goes to the gun club, puts some lead down range, sees a buddy of his. They both say, how about we go out and grab a bite before going home? Unfortunately, our individual doesn't have a license to carry, goes and grabs that bite to eat. He's now in violation of the law.
Right.
And some may say, well, you know, how are the police ever going to find out about it? Unfortunately, we have had situations where that exact scenario has arisen, and the police have charged the individual for violations of the transportation laws.
And then the state of emergency also, which is not frequently mentioned as well.
That is correct. If there is a state of emergency in effect, that would also prohibit someone from being able to open carry without a license to carry firearms.
Sure, and we did have one in the Commonwealth, I believe, this past winter season.
Yes.
I think it's so important that people are cognizant of these firearm regulations because, you know, I think people get the idea, well, I can just sort of manipulate the system. I can sort of take a quick look at the law. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but I think I've got a good grasp on it, and I can just go out and exercise what I believe to be a right to carry. And then they find themselves in a heap of trouble, and they're wondering, wow, how did I get into this, situation? They don't really know what hit them.
You're absolutely right. And just to piggyback off of that on two regards. First, I tell everyone that they should go and get a license to carry firearms. It's $20 for 5 years, and the protections it affords you are so many that there's no reason everyone shouldn't have it who's eligible to have one. Go out and get it. It's a second form of state-issued ID. It can give you all sorts of benefits, such as exceptions to those transportation laws. And even if you never want to conceal carry, especially if you're a female, if, God forbid, a stalker comes into your life or something, you may need that ability immediately to start carrying. And if you already have that license, even though you haven't done it in the past, you immediately have that right. So I highly recommend it.
Sure.
The second point I wanted to make to what you just said is also make sure that you are speaking to an attorney that is very well versed in the issue that you find yourself involved in. All too frequently, we see criminal defense attorneys stating, especially in the Yellow Book and that they know everything about firearms law and self-defense. Yet I cannot tell you the amount of client calls I receive where the client inevitably tells me, I asked my attorney if I was going to lose my rights to this. They told me, oh, no, it's only a misdemeanor. You don't have to worry about it. I relied on that. Then I went out and attempted to purchase a gun, got denied. Now the Pennsylvania State Police is bringing charges against me for making false statements.
Just to recap quickly on the whole open carry, my understanding is you can only conceal carry without a license within the boundaries of your home. You may open carry in public, but you can't enter a vehicle, as you said, any mode of transportation. But you can't enter a vehicle because once you do, you're concealed, and as you said, you can't even ride a bicycle, lawnmower, etc. But is that pretty much a good, concise description?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is my concern is the transportation laws.
Sure.
That someone could be violating those as well.
So what would someone do? Let's say they are carrying openly, or perhaps they're concealed with a license. If they're walking down the street, police officer approaches them and says, something going on, what's happening with you? Maybe you're standing or waiting for a taxi, or you're waiting for a friend standing on the street corner. Well, how would you handle that situation if you were, say, open carrying or concealed carrying?
Well, first, it's important to understand you're under no obligation to respond to the police. You always have Fifth Amendment rights, and a lot of people believe that when the police come up to them that they're required to respond. If you're in your vehicle, obviously if the police stop you, you have to be able to produce your driver's license, proof of insurance, and registration. But when you're walking, the courts have held if the officer asks who you are, you only have to verbally identify yourself. Beyond that, you don't have to say anything. And generally, I recommend to my clients that they not say anything because there is a tendency where someone begins speaking to the police to never shut up.
Right.
And they train themselves to always speak to the police, and then when it really matters, what they end up doing is speaking to the police. So in a situation like that, generally I just say, officer, have a nice night, and go on your way. You don't have to engage them in any way or respond to their questions. If you believe that you are being stopped by them, the question is, officer, am I free to go? If the officer says no, at that point you should demand your attorney.
Okay.
If the officer says yes, you should leave.
Okay, excellent. And now, how does that change, if anything? Say you're carrying, obviously, in a vehicle. Now, if you're carrying openly or concealed, you would have to have a license to carry firearms. So, say you're pulled over by police. Let's just say you are open carrying, just for the sake of argument here. Let's say you're pulled over by police, or say you're stopped at a checkpoint, you're a DUI checkpoint. What would you say that would be the proper protocol when you're dealing with that situation?
If I understand your scenario correctly, the firearm is visible in the car.
Yes.
In that type of situation, I would have my client have their hands on the wheel as soon as the officer comes up, say, officer, I have a license to carry firearms. As you can see, my firearm's sitting there on the passenger seat. How do you want to handle this? You're putting all the power in the police officer to have control of that situation.
Sure.
The officer in that scenario, again, depending on their familiarity with you and their familiarity with firearms in this type of situation, may ask you to get out. I've also had officers that when you inform them that you have a firearm, they say, that's fine, just don't make any quick movements to that location. Changing the scenario around a little bit, if the firearm is not visible, maybe it's on your person and it's concealed, or somewhere else in the vehicle, I tell all my clients that you are not required to disclose that you have a firearm. Now, if you have to go to a location where that firearm is, such as you keep the firearm in your glove box as well as your proof of insurance and your registration, well, at that point, again, hands on the wheel, officer, I have a license to carry firearms. You're telling the officer you know the law. Officer, my firearm is in the glove box. You're telling the officer that information that he or she needs to know with regards to the location of the firearm. And officer, how would you like to handle this? Putting all the power in that police officer. And that is generally the best way to handle those types of situations if it is going to come to light that you have a firearm in your vehicle or on your person.
Now, obviously, I know when we go to the Court of Common Pleas, that is the county courthouse, firearms are prohibited there. And we could touch on that in just a second if you don't mind. What about when we're visiting the local magisterial district judge, the MDJ? Are firearms prohibited on the premises of that courtroom as well?
Both the Court of Common Pleas and the magisterial district judge's office are supposed to make lockers available to anyone to be able to check their firearms, and that's actually in the law. Unfortunately, many MDJ offices do not have lockers available. And this is an issue that should be brought up with the county commissioners if there are county magisterial district judge offices there that do not comply with the law. Unfortunately, there is no way to really force the issue unless someone wants to pay an attorney to go in and litigate it. And that's really the big issue that we see.
And now I think there's a turn, at least with Lehigh County, to regulate the entrance of firearms to the county government center. Can you speak to that?
I was not aware of that. Again, depending on what facilities are within the government center, and off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay, sure.
They may or may not be able to do that. If it is not a court, if there is no prison within it and no court areas confined within it, generally our preemption statute would prohibit a county or a municipality from regulating firearms inconsistently with the Uniform Firearms Act.
Now, my understanding, in a federal facility, that would be a post office, federal courthouse, etc., firearms are always prohibited. Are there firearm check-in stations, say, at the federal district courthouse in Allentown?
No, and you should not even enter the courthouse with the firearm because you're looking at being charged immediately.
Okay.
Unlike Pennsylvania law that provides that in Pennsylvania courthouses they have to make lockers available,
Sure.
That is not the case with the federal courts.
Do you recommend liability insurance for persons carrying firearms?
That is an individual determination. Everyone has to look at the cost-benefit analysis of it. I have some clients who self-insure and others who like the protections afforded by the different insurance providers.
I noticed big news today that Harrisburg was ordered to disclose their donor information relating to their legal defense fund, trying to fight back against the Act 192 provisions. And so I just want to congratulate you on pushing ahead there. I think that's great.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Quickly, if we can delve into Act 192, what's just a brief summary of what it is and the history behind it?
Sure. Act 192 was passed last year by Governor Corbett and was actually one of the last bills he signed into law, and that provided attorney's fees and costs in addition to additional standing allowances for member associations to bring challenges to illegal ordinances. The background to it was 8 individuals up in Erie, Pennsylvania, were charged criminally for violating a city ordinance that prohibited the possession of firearms in a city park. I represented the Erie 8, as they became known as, and was successful in getting the ordinance invalidated by the Commonwealth Court. Unfortunately, there was no ability for my clients to recoup their attorney's fees. The General Assembly was frustrated with the fact that municipalities had violated this provision since 1974, and the fact that no district attorney would prosecute the municipalities that violate it. Even up in Erie, the Erie County District Attorney would not prosecute those responsible for the enforcement of the illegal ordinance. So the General Assembly stepped in, and they provided a mechanism by which an individual can sue where there is merely an illegal ordinance promulgated. It doesn't even have to be enforced, and they are entitled to their attorney's fees and costs if successful.
How many letters approximately, may not have a definite or a certain number, but approximately how many letters did you send out to state municipalities advising them to repeal their unlawful firearm ordinances?
There were somewhere between 80 and 100 different letters that went out.
Wow, you're amazing. Okay, and why did you do that? Why did you pursue the course of just a friendly discourse, say, hey, I realize you may not have been aware of the law. This is what the law says. We now have the opportunity to sue you and recoup our costs. Why did you do that? It would have been, much better for you financially to, of course, collect the money from the suits. It was a sure victory.
Sure, but that wasn't what I wanted to see happen. I didn't want to see all those costs passed on to the taxpayers because, let's be honest, even if the municipality is insured and the insurance carrier ends up paying something on that claim, those rates are going to go up, or the insurance carrier is going to drop that municipality, and the likelihood is when the municipality looks for another insurance provider, the rates are going to be significantly higher than what they were previously. So we wanted to provide all of these municipalities an opportunity to repeal their illegal ordinances and give them, say that they put their best foot forward, didn't know they existed. In some occasions, at least what they're telling us is that they weren't even aware that some of them were on the books. So I think it really benefits our movement to show that we're not looking to hit the taxpayers over the head or the municipalities. We just want compliance with the law. We all are required to comply with the law, and it should be no different in the fact that someone is a publicly elected official.
That's excellent. Okay, and just we got to close up here. Appreciate your time. How many municipalities have repealed their ordinances, just approximately again?
We have over 60 that have repealed their ordinance.
That's great. Now, I know that the City of Philadelphia, correct me if I'm wrong, City of Philadelphia, City of Lancaster, City of Harrisburg, and City of Pittsburgh have refused to repeal their unlawful firearm ordinances. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then, of course, again, we had the disclosure for donor information that was going to be forced upon them today for the City of Harrisburg. And how can people assist you in your fight to have these unlawful firearm ordinances repealed?
Well, we have our blog, blog.princelaw.com, where we keep an updated tally of all those municipalities that have repealed their illegal ordinances. We have done most all of this pro bono, so we always appreciate donations. If you're interested, you can just send them to Prince Law Offices PC. Our address is on our website, princelaw.com. And just note that it's for the unlawful firearm regulations. And we always appreciate individuals informing us if their local municipalities have illegal ordinances on the books.
Thank you so much for joining us, Josh. We appreciate your time and all the wonderful advice. We will be linking to your website address for the princelaw.com as well as Firearms Industry Consulting Group on the show notes page for today. Thanks again for coming on.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
Freedom's the answer, so what is the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be asleep no more.
You're listening to Liberty or Death Radio, Episode 10. I'm your host, Daniel Richardson. We have Tom Campione on the line here with us. He's Director of Legislative Affairs for Pennsylvanians for Self-Protection, Vice Chairman of the Lehigh Valley Tea Party, and Chairman of the Second Amendment Committee for the Lehigh Valley Tea Party. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right, I want to jump right in here. You'd given us some legislation that's in both the Pennsylvania Senate as well as Pennsylvania House. And the first one you had on the list here was House Bill 718, and
yes.
that's regarding transport of firearms. So basically the condensed version here is it permits transport for any lawful purpose. So say I want to go to another location where I can legally open carry. This bill would allow me to put my firearm, unloaded of course, in my vehicle, firearm and the ammunition separate, transport it to another place where I can legally carry, and then do that without any legal ramifications. Is that correct?
Yes, it would, although it's not specifically intended to address that situation.
Oh, okay.
It would cover that situation, in my view, but the primary purpose for introducing this legislation is the fact that today, if you do not have a license to carry, and you are transporting from, let's say, your home to a shooting range to practice.
Yes.
If you are not traveling between those 2 points, and you are pulled over, and the law enforcement officer asks, do you have any firearms or weapons? First off, you're certainly, as I'm sure you know, there's no requirement for you, no duty to inform that you are. But lots of folks do inform anyway because they feel that it is the proper thing to do.
Sure.
Now, once they inform, now they've potentially got a problem on their hands because they may not be going pointed in the correct direction. If they were headed home and they pulled over and stopped for cigarettes or something to eat, the law enforcement officer has reason to then say, you are not heading home. You're not traveling between these two places.
Sure.
and therefore, could charge you with a crime,
And
which I believe is a misdemeanor under today's law.
Yeah, that isn't really incredible. I know some district attorneys, and magistrate district judges are exercising discretion on that, so it may not always be prosecuted, but it is potential under current law for that to be prosecuted. I know Joshua Prince, who was an attorney we had on the show, and he said one time where a fellow was going back from the range, I think it was, and he still had his holster on his hip. The firearm was not in the holster, but it was in the vehicle and unloaded and the whole bit. But somebody, paranoid and saw this holster on his hip and called the police, simply because he had a holster on his hip. And of course, he was not transporting to or from the range. So it's just really incredible that people who have the right intentions, trying to their best to comply with the law, and yet, as you say, could be found violating the law on this technicality.
And that is the real, the underlying purpose of 718 is to fix that situation. Now, I do believe that it would, in fact, cover the situation that you described, and that is transporting to a location where you would then open carry on foot, but that's sort of a byproduct.
Yeah, sure. I think it would be a lawful purpose. What is the status currently of this bill?
It is currently in the Judiciary Committee. It was introduced, assigned to Judiciary, and there it sits.
Like a lot of bills, and so they're just kind of waiting for it to die, I guess.
Well, as activists, unless we are out there attempting to get some movement, it would sit and die.
Right.
So I can tell you that I've been meeting with Lehigh Valley lawmakers, House reps, and giving them copies of each of these three.
Okay.
And then also meeting with state senators, giving them copies of the other two, and asking for sponsorships.
Sure.
Now, one of the excuses that they often give is, well, I'll support it, but sponsoring it is not going to do anything necessarily. Well, in and of itself, sponsoring a bill doesn't do much. However, if we can garner and gather large numbers of sponsors, that now provides us with the ammunition that we need, no pun intended, to go to Rep. Marsico, who is the majority chair of the Judiciary, and then say, hey, we've got 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 sponsors on this bill. We need you to bring it to a vote.
Now, where is Representative Marsico? What does he represent, actually? Because I'm thinking something of like the Tri-County Campaign for Liberty did with the SB 76. They went into that local area and they just bombarded the area with pamphlets and so forth.
Well, his role would be a little bit different in this case. Yes, he represents a specific district, but that's his role as a representative. In addition to that, he has a very specific role as chairman of the committee.
Okay.
So as chairman of the committee, he is really not tied to any particular district. It is his job to vet bills.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, how can we apply pressure to him? And I think that could be only done, primarily done, shall we say, through the voters in his district who can, of course, unelect him. We can call in and say, hey, we're displeased with you, but he's going to laugh and say, ha, But if we can get the people in his district, of course, who can unelect him to get involved, that would be good. We've got to keep moving on here. But House Bill 45, you say, strengthens the castle doctrine. Currently, your stand your ground applies if the attacker displays a firearm or other weapon readily or apparently capable of lethal use. And HB 45 would add a disparity of force consideration. So you're saying there is no disparity of force clause
there is no
currently?
Provision for disparity of
really?
force
Wow.
at all.
That is incredible. That is incredible. Because as you mentioned here, 85-pound lady, if she's facing a couple 225-pound thugs, that currently under Pennsylvania law, currently she has no extra protection for that if they are not armed or displaying arms. Is that correct?
Not if she is outside of her home or her vehicle.
Okay.
So you take a situation where it's 10 o'clock at night. She's coming from Walmart. She's going to her car. She's just about at her car, and three guys approach in an aggressive manner.
Yes.
And she orders them to stop. Don't come any closer. They continue to come to her. She fears for her life.
Right.
She draws. She shoots and kills one of them. Well, she could be prosecuted for murder.
Wow, that's incredible.
Under the law currently. Because although we have stand our ground, that applies in your home and in your vehicle.
Okay.
But not outside those two areas.
That's just amazing. What is the status on that? Is it also in committee?
Same thing. All three of these.
Wow.
All firearms House bills go to House Judiciary Committee, which is Ron Marsico, and all Senate firearms bills go to the Senate Judiciary, which is Stuart Greenleaf.
I see. Okay. Now, House Bill 783, you mentioned that this is going to put in language to strengthen against retaining information, adds a penalty of up to $10,000 and 15 years for any government or law enforcement official who knowingly violates. They store information on firearms purchases here in the Commonwealth. And that is illegal now. Is that not correct?
It is illegal now.
Okay.
However, the Pennsylvania police do maintain a record of sale, and that has been deemed legal because it is not a complete document, includes only firearms that have been purchased through an FFL, and would not include those that came into the state when people moved in or handed down, that sort of thing. So it's been declared lawful because it is not a registry. It is not complete. What this bill does is say, hey, any list, we don't care if it's in a database, a written piece of paper, a spreadsheet, whatever, any list is in fact a registry.
Absolutely. And, you know, that would also apply, and I don't know if this is a current bill, it's not on your list here, but the switch from PICS, Pennsylvania Instant Check System, to NICS, National Instant Check System, that would also apply to that debate because people who are concerned, obviously, about the FBI retaining their information and about the state police, too. Personally, I mean, I don't want either one to retain information. I would prefer the Pennsylvania State Police did retain it if it was an either-or. But we can control, Tom, we can control the Pennsylvania State Police with this legislation. That perhaps would do away with that problem, and we're just going to have to deal with PICS being down every week or so. That's just that's how it goes. But, okay, moving on, Senate Bill 74 says you can apply in another county. Now, would this also apply, say, to Philadelphia? If you lived in the city of Philadelphia, could you go to Montgomery County and apply there?
I believe Montgomery County borders, is that correct?
I believe it does.
If it does, then the answer is yes. They could go to their chief of police, their county sheriff, or an adjacent county.
So
the basic premise there is currently the sheriff or Philadelphia chief of police has a monopoly on issuing licenses.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
We all know monopolies generally mean bad business.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Would it be better to perhaps look into changing the character reference clause instead of introducing legislation like this?
It might be. I would like to see the character reference struck completely.
Okay, sure.
But the reality is, this one is sitting there in committee, and a character reference bill is not. You know, you go with what you can.
Sure, I understand.
The reason for these 5 is that we happen to believe that these 5 are sufficiently non-controversial that we can actually get them through the General Assembly.
Sure. And I know...
And potentially with a majority, a veto-proof majority, potentially.
Okay, that's excellent. I know the only thing I would be concerned about is taking control, I guess, away from the local law enforcement, and then giving it more of a area-wide, sort of thing. But I don't know there's anything concrete I can oppose it on that. That's just kind of a general feeling. Moving on to SB 357, the nullification bill that Gerald Metcalf introduced, basically nullifying all new federal laws, executive orders, and regulations. So that only applies to new laws and regulations, or does that also apply to any unconstitutional federal laws and regulations?
As written, only new after the date of passage. This is, in fact, the companion bill to Metcalf's 357 in the House. We are pushing the Senate version, quite frankly, because there are a lot of people in the House who won't sponsor the House bill simply because it's Metcalf's. This is how childish many are.
That's horrible.
In the House.
That's horrible.
No, I won't. Yep, I believe it. I want to do it, but I won't do it. I won't sponsor because it's Metcalf's.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, is this cover all firearms? I know some of these nullification bills only cover firearms and components manufactured within that state. Does this cover all of them, no matter where manufactured, or only in the Commonwealth?
all.
All okay.
Yes, there was
Okay.
another one last session that covered only those manufactured in
Yes.
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But both HB and SB 357 cover all.
Okay. Now, the Senate bills,
pleasure.
they're also in the Senate Judiciary Committee then as well?
Correct. With,
Okay, got it.
Committee Chair
Got
Stuart Greenleaf, another one who doesn't want to bring them up.
Okay.
But it means going in there, talking with these people,
Sure.
and convincing them they need to bring it to a committee vote.
Tom, I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you. You
All
too.
right. You've been listening to Liberty or Death Radio, Episode 10. We want to thank you for joining us. You can find us online at danielrayrichardson.com, on Facebook, facebook.com/Liberty or Death Radio, twitter.com/Liberty or Death R, or at Liberty or Death R on Twitter. Email the show. We'd love to hear from you at libertyorddeathradio@gmail.com. Again, libertyorddeathradio@gmail.com. Pack your heat safely and legally. Have a great day.